Hi there, I'm Birgit O'Connor and welcome to my studio. For today's lesson, I wanted to create a little tide pool. Now, the reason why I did this is because I live close to the beach and we have lots of little crabs and starfish. And the challenge I had for this lesson was painting above and below the water. So if you live on a river, you can change it. You could actually put different rocks in there and put different fish in there. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be kelp, but you're going to learn the idea of how to paint above and below the water. Now, for this lesson, when it comes to the starfish, I used some masking fluid, but you could actually use a crayon or a clear candle to get those little spots in there. And then when it comes to all of this area, we're going to play with our brush stroke and really just have fun with the color. You can make it as simple or as complicated as you like. That's up to you. So let's get started and have some fun. For this painting, we'll be doing a little tide pool. I want to put a little starfish here and a crab, and this will be underwater, this will be above water, we have some land up here, and this is going to be the basic technique that we'll be using for our little starfish over here. And the paper I'm using is the Canson Watercolor Aquarelle. So before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and use some washi tape and put it around the edges. And if I want to prevent it from sticking to the paper, that it really doesn't tear, I'm going to go ahead and tap it on my cloth here so it can go ahead and get some lint on it. And then I'll place the tape along the edges. Now you don't need to do this. But the reason why I'm doing it, I think it leaves a really nice clean border. Then I'll scoot this over to the side. And my plan is to make our little starfish and a crab and put some kelp in there, maybe a sea anemone, my land up there, and then my sky and the top of the water. Now you can keep this as simple or as complicated as you like. You could actually make kelp like this, or a starfish and kelp and shells like that, or just shells, starfish like this, or the crab. It's going to be the same basic idea. You don't have to be perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and try to develop this a little bit more, but the basic idea is going to be our sky, land, water, and underneath the water. Now, since I'd like to use the same technique that I used in this one, I'm going to mask my starfish. But then again, you can also use a crayon or a little wax candle if you prefer. So you can do it either way. So it really depends what skill level you're at. And I'm using this instead of the candle, just because I can get a bit more control over this. And then I'm using a rubber nib like that. I'm going to dip it in and I'll follow those little lines. I'm just going to go ahead and wet the surface like this, bring it down into my water. I have to stay away from my starfish because that's still wet. And I could even get one of these kids' colors over here. That's a nice bright blue. Let's go ahead and get that in there. And let's get that in the water too. That way we'll have a nice reflection. 2 big strokes. And I'm going to remove the extra water off my brush, just like this. And I'm going to actually scoot off some of that extra water along the edges. Just like that. Now we've got a great sky. We just need to get our landscape in. And I have to wait for everything to dry, so I'm actually going to lift a little color out. That way I'm not going to have a blue hill, but I don't want to release more water, so I'm actually pressing harder on my brush like that. And then let's let that dry. Okay, now that is pretty dry, and this is still wet, so I can't really touch that. So I have to wait with that. Let's see about this. That's okay, sort of. And I'm going to go ahead and get our little landscape in. So for our cliffs, I think I'd like them to be browner. So I'm going to take a little bit of my burnt sienna. Or you could take the brown from your set over here if you want. We just don't want too much color. I don't want it to be too thick and opaque. I'd like it to be transparent, just like that. And then let's go ahead and think about how I want to shape this. I don't want to worry too much about it. You can see if I go in like this, it's going to be really solid. So I've got some color on there, dipping my brush in the water, just like that. And then I'll just take that brush, bring it right up to the edge like this. So that way we've got some darker color there, lighter up there. And let's find where we want to place our cliff, just like that. In fact, if I drop water in here, it's lifting up some of that blue, creating a really interesting line over here. So let's go ahead and bring that down a tiny bit like that. We could even drop in more color if we'd like, just a little bit. And I think I'd like to get a reflection over here. So I'm going to use some of that same color, bring it down about there into the water. About there. I'm trying to leave a little dry space. Otherwise, it's going to turn into one big blob. Just like that. But I also don't want it to be so hard like this. Otherwise, that could be a bit distracting. So let's see how that goes. Oh, this is nice too. If I make some little lines, that way it looks like the top of the water, the reflection. There we go. And maybe soften just a few of those lines. So again, what I'm doing is waiting for this to dry. So I can't do too much up here. And what I could do, since this is a tide pool, I could go ahead, add a little more color over here. I'm thinking of this as the backside of Duxbury Reef, right there in that little cove where all the nudibranchs are. Let's go ahead and get some little rocks in. Now I could turn this around like that, so I can change the shape of the rocks a little bit easier and just break it up. Keep it as simple as possible. And I could even wiggle my brush to lift some of that out. Okay, this is still wet. We could add more color there. So maybe to keep it fun, let's drop a little bit in. And we can add some into our water here, just like that. We have to wait for this to dry and then we'll come back. Now I'm checking to see if this sticks to my finger. It'll feel tacky, but if it sticks, then it's still too wet. If it's tacky, that's okay. Now since I want this to be underwater, I'm thinking I could paint each one by itself, and that way we would have brighter color, and I'd like that. But I want to put this underwater. So I'm thinking I need to separate it, and let's keep it hopefully as simple as possible. I'll take some of my yellow, it doesn't have to be a bright yellow, bring it into my blue maybe, a little bit like that. And let's go down here, right where we are underwater, just like that. And just so we have a separation. And then I think I'm going to take some just plain clean water and bring that down. I'm going to paint right over everything, bring it down, mostly water, hardly any color. Let's bring it down. So most of the color is right about there. I also have a larger brush. This might be nice. So this is called a gradual wash, going like that, a transition from light to dark. And I would like to not have this be so hard right there. So I'm going to go ahead and try to soften that edge with just a little bit of water. And what I could do, take this brush, just soften it so it doesn't look like it's cut in half. All right, so that gives me a really good foundation. I'm going to go back and forth just a tiny bit more, and then let's let that dry. So there's a lot of drying in between these layers. Okay, I really like how this is turning out. Here we really can't see much of a difference, and I'm trying to decide, do I want to add a bit more color, leave it alone? So I think let's go ahead, add a bit more color. I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow color, bring it into my blue, and let's see if I can do that. So it's actually more like a little bit of a green. And I'll bring it down a tiny bit. I think that works out pretty well. So maybe just kind of wiggle my brush a little bit, bring it down, and then clean off my brush. Soften some of those edges, just like that. So hopefully it looks like it's underwater. Take this and soften. So it's almost like being in a fish tank looking underwater. Like that. We've got a good start. Now this is pretty dry. I see some damp spots over here. I think we can get away with it. I'm going to clean this up. Let's see. Let's get some color in here for our crab. Now, when a crab is underwater, they're not really a bright red. They're more of a darker color. But if we have it really dark, we're not really going to be able to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get some red color in here. And let's see, let's go ahead and get some red on our crab. I'm just going to go along that line there. And I don't want it to be flat, so I've got my water in there. I'm just going to lift a little bit of that color out. Actually, I'm just going to go all the way around the edges, just like that. And get our legs in, just like we did earlier with our other crab. Big legs. You can see I'm mostly playing with how I hold my brush. I'm pressing and lifting, trying to make some big strokes and change it so it's not all the same size. And we can add a bit more color in there if we want. And for underneath them, I'm going to just flatten my brush and then lift. And I don't really know the details right there, so I'm going to go ahead and just connect a few of those little lines and maybe leave that alone, just like that. Now for our starfish, I think it's dry enough. I'm going to take our yellow and orange, and I'm going to start adding some color inside our starfish. I'm going to dab it around just like that. And I'll touch a few of those little lines. Let's get some more color in there. This will make it more fun. And we can add details later. Just like that. For our sea anemone, I'd like it to be green because that's what I see out here with the anemones. I'm going to take their green. I'd like it to be a bright green. So I'm going to take some of my yellow, mix it into my green. It's hard to see it, just like that over there. And I'm going to go ahead, go like this. I'm brushing up with my stroke like that. Of course, I could be more detailed, but that's really all we need to do. Maybe I'll put that in there just like that. I could add more of these sea anemones. I could add kelp. Maybe I'll add another one of those. Where could we add it? Let's add one over here. And let's think about our kelp. The kelp is going to be a darker green. So let's go over here and get our green. I don't want it to just be blue. I'm going to add some purple into that. That's not the right color. And that is, of course, I'm making a big mess. So let's go ahead and work with this. I think I'm going to press like this. So we have our kelp. I can do some of these. This is a little muddy looking. So I'll have a few of those. And I think I want to get more of my magenta or even some purple in there. Let's see how that looks. That way it'll look like seaweed underneath there, or how if you've ever had a chance to see seaweed, it all depends how the light hits it, and it can get these wonderful iridescent colors in there. Even if we had a little blue. What would happen if I have a little bit of that blue in there? Oh, that's kind of fun. I love how it moves. I love it. I love that combination in there. Beautiful. I could even create some ribbon kelp in there. Some of you may have done the kelp like this. Now that's a lot of fun. We're working with the brush stroke. We could even do that here. Let's go ahead and try that. Let's see, I'm going to go wide to thin, something like that. And I might play with my stroke. Now that can look a little dull, so I'm going to take my blue and try to just press and lift, press and lift. And since I like how that purple transitions into it, I might go ahead and just add a little bit there. If we just touch a few of those edges, that way it might look like it's more underwater. Maybe I'll touch a few up there. So we're breaking up the space. We want all the action to be underwater. The crabs are usually close to a rock. I'm going to hold my brush just a little differently. And I don't have to be perfect. I'm just trying to get an idea where I may want to put my rock. Do you see how I switched my brush, turned it? Just like that. And then let's get some sand in here, or just some rock shapes. I think I'm going to bring more of that blue and that purple in there, just because I think it's so pretty. And I'm going to go around our sea anemone here. And bring in some of our magenta. Again, I'm thinking I'd like to play with my color. And we'll see what happens. We can't do anything until that dries. So put your brush down and step away for a while. Let's get some of that green over there. Maybe some of that yellow. Let's put that over there. I want a bright green if I can do that. Maybe I'll take a little bit of that blue. That's okay, but that might work. Let's go ahead and get some of that green in there. Let's do a little bit more over here. We want it to be underneath the ocean and have some seaweed and kelp. Like that. Get some mingling of different colors. Maybe, you know what might be fun is if we take just that little idea of that dot, 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 something like that, and maybe a few more of these little ones, and turn it into a ribbon of kelp like that, and maybe a few more little dots. Give it some tidal action, and we can leave it that way. Or if we want to mingle it, we can just soften a few of those edges. It'll break it up a little bit. And then for that fun part, if we take some of that purple or that magenta and just drop a little bit of that in there. And that's going to be a different kind of seaweed. Now, we don't need to really make it look like seaweed. It's just going to be the impression of it. Here, my crab, I'd like him to stand out a bit more. And since he's red, if I went with a darker green back there, maybe he'll stand out a bit more. I'll use the blue, that'll be fine too. So I'm going to drop in more of that purple in there, that magenta, and let it run. Where else can I put that in? Oh, I like that. I'll break that up. Add a bit more yellow over there. I could even play with this, like how about bring some of that green down there. That works, that's okay. Maybe a little bit more over there. We've got so much happening under the ocean here. I think I'll go next to my starfish. And just try to drop a little bit of that color in, just because I like the color. That way it looks like that kelp is maybe moving through. Let's get a bit more color in them. I'll take that orange and red, make them stand out. We need eyes on him, but I'm not ready to do that. And a little bit around those corners, those little joints. Okay, so we've got a lot of action going on. That's fun. I love it. And let's think about up here. Maybe I'll get some of our color, just kind of mingle that together and add maybe some sort of grass up there, because this is up on the hill. Let's think about our beach. That's going to be over here. So I'll separate it just by going along the beach like that and soften. Now that stands out a little bit more. Now we can see it. And as a reflection, I'm going to do the same thing down here. Just follow what I did up here, and to help you see it, if you turned your painting this way, then you would see what this looks like on this side. So we're just going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. It'll be like a little bit of a mirror image. So here this goes down, then this would go down similar to that. Do you see what I'm doing? It's like this, then I'm going to go like this. So that way those two shapes almost look the same. Let's turn it back around and then soften that a little bit. That will be our reflection. If we got rid of this, maybe we'd have a better idea what this looked like. Now this is starting to tear my paper a little bit, so I just need to go a little slower when I remove it. Oh, I think we've got a great scene happening. This is great. Looks like a wonderful reflection there. And this is fine, or we could come back in, add a few more little details, whatever you like. And just adding a few little lines here and there. It's not even necessary, but it just ends up looking a little more developed or a little more complicated. And all that is touching the paper here and there. And we could actually bring a little bit of that down into our water. Just a tiny bit, not much. What if we took a little color? We could leave that alone, but what if I took a little color, went around this edge? Would that look like it's more underwater? Maybe. This is pretty dry, so I'm going to see if I can get away with this and lift out some of that masking fluid. Now, if you did this with a crayon or a candle, then you'd already have your little white dots. So, like I've said before, when we just using the crayon or the candle is almost easier in many ways, and the result is immediate. Let's shake that off. To make them stand out just a tiny, tiny bit more, what I could do is try to clean up some of those edges. I might go along the side of the starfish, just like that a little bit with a brush, so that way I don't have as much color along the side. We should probably put his little eyes in. I'm going to get some dark, some black, or just a dark color. Let's see if we can do that. Let's get the little eyes in right there. Oh, look at that. Now we can really see it. So now we have a wonderful little tide pool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had as much fun as I did with this. And until next time, have fun and happy painting.